off here at number 10 is Black Hag's Cell. Found in a secluded hollow in Limerick County, Ireland, lies a mess of crumbling ruins and the ghost of a satanic nun said to have been buried alive. And if that isn't just the perfect setup for a horror movie. As the legend goes, sometime during the 16th century, the demonic nun would sneak out of her monastery at night to the nearby abbey. It was here she performed her satanic rituals, such as sacrificing animals or placing curses on the locals to please the devil. But one day during a battle between rival houses, the nun was wounded by an arrow and fell unconscious. Believing her to be dead, they buried the nun immediately, but soon farmers started hearing screams coming from her burial plot. At first they brushed it off as nothing, but as the screams continued day in and day out, they rushed to exhume the body, worried they buried her too soon. But they were too late. The nun had died and was left with bloody fingers from trying to scratch her way out. It's said at night her screams can still be heard echoing over the hills, and locals don't dare go near in fear that she will possess anyone who steps foot on the land. Coming in at number 9, Hoia Baciu Forest. Known as the Bermuda Triangle of Transylvania, this forest is the breeding ground of unexplained disappearances as well as countless paranormal phenomena. The forest, in fact, has so many terrifying tales surrounding it that many locals refuse to even enter it. But according to those brave enough to try, they were attacked by something indescribable, followed by hours of vomiting, nausea, migraines, and left covered in scratches, bruises, and even burns. Its most haunting legend is that of the forest girl, who allegedly entered at just 5 years old and disappeared. 5 years later, she emerged from the woods wearing the same dress as the day she went missing, and she had no memories or recollection of going missing or what had happened to her in the last 5 years. Some believe that the forest is possessed by a satanic cult. A tour guide once said to have found a group of 60 people gathered in a clearing looking as if they were trying to open a gateway to another dimension, while others think it could be aliens. In 1968, a military technician released a photo he claimed to be a UFO, which was promptly hidden from the public before he was fired. And I mean, it's not every day someone from the military is confirming a UFO sighting. Well, whether it's haunted by a demon or a spot frequented by aliens, either way, I have no interest in checking it out for myself. Next up at number 8 here is the Snechter House. Once home to the Snechter family in the 1980s, they thought they'd found the perfect spot, as it was a fairly affordable house and close to the hospital where their son was being treated. But it wasn't until after they were all settled that they learned the house had operated as a mortuary for several decades since the 1920s. At first, everything seemed alright, but soon they discovered old equipment from the funeral home in their basement. Now, this raised an eyebrow, but they brushed it off and didn't think much of it. That was until they uncovered that their backyard still contained many of the buried corpses, along with eerie photographs of the corpses hidden away in nooks and crannies. Soon they were being haunted by evil spirits, routinely hearing haunting noises and even seeing full-bodied apparitions. The mother claims that when she was mopping the basement, the water would turn red as if it were blood, or that she would catch objects flying around the room while lights would aggressively flicker. At the time, there were rumors circulating that the former funeral directors were guilty of necrophilia, which led to the house becoming haunted by an evil presence, seeking revenge on all that lived in the house for eternity. Coming in at number 7 is the ancient Ram Inn. Rumored to be the most haunted building in England, there are no shortage of terrifying entities that haunt these grounds. Supposedly, the inn lies atop 2 ley lines, one of which directly intersects with Stonehenge. And if that wasn't enough cause for concern, it was also built over a 5,000-year-old pagan burial ground. According to witnesses, a witch, a poltergeist, a succubus, and an incubus haunt the property, but many think it is much, much more. Legend has it that there are so many demons haunting the grounds that visitors routinely had to get exorcisms after their visit to the inn. Then, in the 1960s, a man named John Humphreys bought the house and decided to make it his own. He had heard the rumors, but believed they were just that, rumors. But on his first night, he felt something strange. There was something watching him, something very, very evil. Despite his inclination that a dark entity possessed his house, he continued to live there, often recounting paranormal sightings like strange voices, orbs of light appearing out of thin air, and said that once a force even grabbed him by the arm and dragged him around the living room. Even so, John remained until his dying days. And I mean, you do you, but if it were me, I would have been gone after the first night. Coming in at number 6 is Castle Huska. Located in North Prague, this castle was built back in the 13th century. Now, there are a few things that are strange about this castle. Firstly, many of its windows are fake. They are simply glass panes in front of complete walls. Secondly, it lacks common things. There's no water source, no kitchen, and for years after its initial construction, there were no occupants. Lastly, the castle was built in a remote area. It was not near any trading routes, nor did it possess any kind of strategic value. That is because it was built for one reason and one reason only: to cover a large hole in the ground. Now, you might be asking yourself, what's so bad about that? Well, according to legend, the hole was actually a gateway to hell, and Satan himself was said to appear at this very spot. In an attempt to close off the gateway, the castle was constructed atop the hole, hoping to seal it for eternity. But during World War II, German soldiers settled in and used the castle to conduct experiments of the occult variety, and it's believed that these rituals brought out the evil spirits back into our realm. Today, both Satan and some of the evil soldiers haunt the hallowed halls, and some say if you listen closely, you might just be able to hear the scratching of demons trying to join them. Coming in at number 5, the Rose Hall Great House. According to legend, a woman named Annie Palmer moved to Jamaica in the early 1800s. Annie was young, but she was smart and had one big goal in mind: marry rich. While she may have looked sweet and innocent, Annie was actually a renowned voodoo practitioner and became known as the White Witch by the locals. Anyway, after a short while in Jamaica, she met Mr. John Palmer, the owner of the Rose Hall estate, and wasted no time locking him down. After the wedding, Annie moved into the estate with her husband, but not long after, he mysteriously died. As it turns out, it was not so mysterious after all, as Annie had poisoned her husband, and she continued to repeat this pattern twice more while ruling over the estate. And it wasn't just her husbands that Annie was cruel to. She was notoriously brutal to the slaves on the plantation, never hesitating to any one of them that stepped out of line or dared question her. Then there were her lovers. Annie was rumored to have copious amounts of lovers, many of which were enslaved to her, and incidentally, this would also be her downfall. After one of his family members, one of her enslaved lovers, Taku, snuck into Annie's room and killed her in her sleep. Taku was also a voodoo practitioner, and fearing she would haunt him after death, placed a curse on her grave to keep her entrapped. But it said the ritual was never completed, so the ghost of Annie escapes each night, wreaking havoc on trespassers and terrifying all that see her. Next up at number 4 is the Ostrich Inn. During the 17th century, this inn was owned by a man named John Jarman and his wife. The two welcomed travelers from far and wide, but had a special appetite for wealthy customers. When such folks wandered into their inn, they took very kindly to them, offering them free ale and a special room above the kitchen, adorned with much nicer furnishings than the rest. But, as I'm sure you've guessed, there was a huge catch. You see, the bed in this special room was nailed to the floor, and under the bed was a secret trap door. During the night, while their wealthy visitor was sleeping, the husband and wife would pull a lever in their kitchen, dropping the trap door and shooting the poor traveler into a vat of boiling water. Once they were dead, they would rob the wealthy traveler and then hide their body in the cellar. And they might have gotten away with it too if it weren't for Thomas Cole. Cole was a wealthy clothing maker and was swindled by the couple before in the same way as many before him. But luckily, at the time of the incident, his horse happened to break loose and was wandering the town. Folks recognized the horse and thought that Cole must have fallen off, and so a search party began, eventually discovering him dead in the inn. The couple was arrested and sentenced to be hanged, but prior to their death, they confessed to 60 people in their inn. To this day, many have witnessed their evil spirits haunting the halls, as well as all the souls whose lives were lost. Coming in at number 3 is the Demon House. Once the home of Mr. Cranmer, he claims that he and his family lived in this house of horrors for 18 years before an exorcism in 2006 finally drove the demon away. Cranmer says that over the years he would watch helplessly as blood dripped from his walls and invisible hands assaulted him and his family, fearing each day that it might be his last. But where did this possession begin? Well, Cranmer believed it all started with Dr. James Mahon, a former tenant of the home. Dr. Mahon was an alcoholic who routinely performed illegal operations on women in his basement. But not because he was looking to help these women, no, it was because he had a deal with a demon. Cranmer says the demon who haunts the house is Moloch, a demon who feeds off of sacrifices, and that Moloch had possessed Dr. Mahon in order to feed off his basement operations. Once Dr. Mahon died, there was no one left to please this demon, and so he tortured all the families who moved in after, hoping to be able to scare them into giving him what he wanted. Luckily, Mr. Cranmer was able to rid the house of Moloch, and his family escaped the torture unpossessed. Coming in at number 2, the House of Death. Once the home of actress and poet Jan Bryant Bartell in the 1960s, the house holds a reputation for housing some of the most demonic entities in all of New York City. Within weeks of moving in, Jan knew something was deeply wrong with the house. She would often feel the touch of an icy hand across the back of her neck, or hear footsteps follow her around the empty house. The house always reeked like something was rotting or dying, and her dogs were always barking into nothingness. Then one day, one of her dogs died, as if out of nowhere, so she decided to take matters into her own hands and called on a psychic medium. But this only angered the demons living inside. During the first session, the medium went into an unusual trance, speaking about the hundreds of bodies buried underneath the house. Jan knew it wasn't the medium speaking, and it was then that she learned how many people had been killed or taken their own lives while living here. Then, all of a sudden, the medium's eyes bulged out of her head and she started shouting that she would never leave in a deep demonic voice. The encounter was enough for Jan to leave and never return. A few years later, she published a book about her life in the haunted house, just weeks before she sadly took her own life. Still think it's just a coincidence? Years later, in 1987, a father brutally killed his own daughter in a drug-fueled rage, and many believe that he could have been possessed by the very same demon that Jan ran away from all those years before. And last up for you today in our number 1 spot, the Armstrong Street House. In 1970, a couple named Anne and Roger Brock moved their family into a beautiful 4-bedroom house in Kokomo, Indiana. The family didn't have a ton of money, but they were able to score the house for just $5 grand, which in hindsight could have been a clue. Mere hours after the family moved in, they began to experience strange things. Lights were flickering and noises were appearing, but they brushed it off as nothing. Then one night, one of the daughters, Lana, was awoken by sudden shaking all around her bed. She thought it was an earthquake at first, but then she looked out her window to see a strange man, seemingly drenched, standing right beside her bedroom window, staring at her. Lana freaked out, but then as quickly as he appeared, he was gone. This became routine for poor Lana, and demons started haunting her every night. One night she heard a knock at her door, and assuming it was her parents, she went to answer it, only to have her mouth covered by an invisible hand. She tried to scream, but the hand wouldn't let her. Suddenly her dog appeared and distracted the entity, allowing Lana to scream for help, but this only angered the spirit. To get back at her, it picked up the dog and threw it out the window, sending it plunging to its demise. Years later, they learned that someone was killed in the house, which could explain the tortures, but still, not a single member of the family has ever dared return.
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have Briavel's Castle in Gloucester. I don't know, if I said that wrong, remove some letters. I don't know what to tell ya. Briavel's castle is a ruined Norman fortress located in the Forest of Dean, and over the years the castle has been the subject of many haunting tales and ghostly sightings. One of the most famous stories of that is the White Lady, who is said to haunt the castle. According to legend, she is the ghost of a woman who was wrongly accused of stealing from the castle and was subsequently executed. Her ghost has been reported to roam the castle's halls and corridors, and she has been seen by many visitors and staff members. Another famous ghostly tale from the castle is that of the Phantom Coach, who is said to drive up to the castle gates before disappearing without a trace. Legend has it that the coach is driven by the ghost of a former owner of the castle who was killed by his own wife and her lover. In addition to these tales, there have also been reports of unexplained noises and strange apparitions throughout the castle. Despite the many stories of ghosts and hauntings, this castle remains a popular tourist destination and a fascinating piece of British history. Why not head over for a visit? I heard you can even stay in the oubliette. In our number 9 spot today, we have the Glasgow Necropolis. This place is exactly what it sounds like. It is a necropolis, and what place is more haunted than a necropolis? The Glasgow Necropolis is a Victorian cemetery located on a hill overlooking Glasgow, Scotland. Over the years, it has become a popular spot for ghost hunters and paranormal enthusiasts due to the many haunting tales that surround the site. One of the most famous ghost stories associated with the necropolis is that of a female ghost. According to legend, she is the ghost of a wealthy woman who was buried in a white dress and veil. Her ghost has been seen by many visitors floating among the tombstones and crypts. Another tale involves the ghost of a man who was buried alive. Legend has it that he woke up in his coffin and tried to escape but died before he could make it out. Visitors have reported hearing knocking sounds coming from the ground and feeling cold spots near his grave. At the end of the day, while there are thousands of people buried here, only a small group have gravestones and even fewer have names. This only adds to the eerie nature of the cemetery. There are even rumors that a vampire just might be wandering the grounds looking for its next prey. All in all, this place is full of haunting tales, urban legends, and a whole bunch of spook. In our number 8 spot today, we have Pluckley in Kent. The village of Pluckley, located in the county of Kent, England, is known for being one of the most haunted villages in the entire country. There are numerous ghost stories associated with the village, many of which have been passed down through generations. One of the most famous tales is that of the Screaming Woods, a dense forest area on the outskirts of the village. According to legend, the woods are haunted by the ghost of a highwayman who was caught and killed by villagers, and his screams can still be heard at night. Another famous ghost story involves the Watercress Woman, a ghostly figure who is said to appear near a stream in the village, carrying a basket of watercress on her arm. It is believed that she drowned in the stream while picking watercress, and her ghost has been seen by many villagers over the years. Other reported sightings include ghosts of a monk, a schoolmaster, and even a haunted pub. Despite the spooky tales, Pluckley remains a charming and picturesque village, attracting visitors from around the world. Visit if you dare. In our number 7 spot today, we have Chillingham Castle in Northumberland. Chillingham Castle, located in Northumberland, England, is considered to be one of the most haunted castles in the country. The castle has a dark and mysterious history, and there have been numerous reports of paranormal activity over the years. One of the most famous ghosts associated with the castle is the Blue Boy. According to legend, the ghost is a spirit of a young man who was imprisoned in a room in the castle and left to die. His ghost has been seen by many visitors, appearing as a blue flash of light or as a boy dressed in blue clothing. Another famous tale is that of a specific room in the castle where prisoners were once harmed and then executed. Visitors have reported feeling cold spots, hearing unexplained noises, and even feeling the presence of the ghosts of the tormented prisoners. Other reported sightings include ghosts of a lady in white, a soldier, and even a ghostly cat. In our number 6 spot today, we have Corfe Castle. Corfe Castle, located in Dorset, England, is a ruined fortress with a rich history and many ghostly tales. The castle was originally built in the 11th century and was destroyed during the English Civil War in the 17th century. One of the most famous ghosts associated with the castle is that of Lady Banks, the wife of the castle's owner during the Civil War. According to legend, she defended the castle against enemy soldiers and was killed during the siege. Her ghost has been seen wandering the castle ruins dressed in a long white gown. Another famous tale is that of the drummer boy, a ghostly figure who is said to haunt the castle gatehouse. According to legend, the boy was caught spying on enemy soldiers, and this swiftly led to his demise. His ghost has been seen and heard drumming his sticks on the castle walls. As you walk up the steps to the castle, you might also learn about Edward the Martyr, who was set to be king until he also lost his life here at the hands of his own stepmother, who wanted her own birth son to be the heir to the throne. Other reported sightings include ghosts of soldiers, knights, and even a headless woman. Didn't see that one coming. In our number 5 spot today, we have Whitby Abbey, North Yorkshire. Whitby Abbey is a ruined Gothic abbey located in the seaside town of Whitby, North Yorkshire in England, and upon looking at it, it totally makes sense why people say this was part of the inspiration for Dracula. The abbey has a rich history and has been the subject of many haunting tales over the years. One of the most famous ghost stories associated with the abbey is that of the Whitby Abbey ghost. Of course. According to legend, the ghost is the spirit of a young woman who fell to her death from the abbey's high tower while trying to escape her angry husband. Her ghost has been seen wandering the abbey ruins dressed in a white dress. Ghosts really seem to vibe with white dresses for some reason. Another famous tale is that of the Black Abbot, a ghostly figure who is said to haunt the abbey's grounds. According to legend, the Black Abbot was a former abbot of the monastery who was executed for his crimes. His ghost has been seen wearing a black robe and carrying a book. Other reported sightings include ghosts of monks, nuns, and even a ghostly dog. Despite the many spooky tales, Whitby Abbey remains a popular tourist destination, offering visitors a glimpse into the fascinating history of the abbey and the paranormal activity associated with it. In our number 4 spot today, we have Glencoe, Argyll. Glencoe is a beautiful and rugged valley located in the Argyll region of Scotland, and is pretty famous for being one of the settings in the Bond film Skyfall, but it's also famous for its haunting tales. The area is steeped in history, and it all starts back in 1692 with what is known as the Massacre of Glencoe. In that year, soldiers loyal to the English crown killed members of the MacDonald clan who had been hosting them as guests. It is said that the ghosts of the lost MacDonalds still haunt the valley, seeking revenge on their killers. Another famous tale is that of the Grey Man. According to legend, the Grey Man is a ghostly figure who is said to haunt the summits of the mountains in Glencoe. His ghostly presence has been reported by many climbers and hikers over the years. In our number 3 spot today, we have Highgate Cemetery, London. This cemetery is located in London, and for years it has been the central point of many a horrific tale. These stories include those of demons, ghosts, and all things paranormal, and even the famous Highgate vampire. Legend goes that the cemetery is home to this vampire, as first reported by 2 girls walking through the area. They claimed to see the dead rise from their graves. Soon after this report came the discovery of animal carcasses, which is never a good sign, but to make matters worse, all of these ones had been drained of their blood. Stories of the vampire spread like wildfire, and people were rightfully pretty creeped out. This all led to the vampire hunt that took place on Friday, April 13th, 1973. Friday the 13th. It's never good. During this hunt, residents of the town began exhuming bodies and then also beheading them. Okay? There are still many rumors and stories that swirl around the area, and I'm just gonna go ahead and say, if the gates to hell weren't located here before the beheadings, they definitely are now. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Skirrid Inn in Wales. I love visiting a place that has lots of history. You know when you enter a building and can learn about its history and the people who used to walk in its halls? It's just so interesting and very cool, except for when you're sipping away on a cold tasty pint and find out that where you're sitting is a place that used to be used for public hangings. Yeah, things get a bit more grim when you bring that story up, alright? I don't know if I want what's on those taps. That is exactly the history behind the Skirrid Inn. The upper area of the pub was once used as a courthouse where people would stand trial. If the person on trial was convicted and sentenced to death, I guess this place was super convenient because they also wouldn't have to waste any time and could just carry out the sentence right then and there. A bit dark, I'd say. The bar decided it would keep the creepy little cell that was once used to hold the prisoners, which seems like an odd choice, but I guess it's all in the name of history. It is estimated that around 180 180 executions took place here, and to this day you can still take a peek at the hanging beam that was used way back when. Not exactly sure I'd want to, as there's no way that thing isn't cursed. Many people who have been to the bar state that they have felt things like a sudden drop in temperature, the feeling of a rope around their neck, or even seeing some strange, scary, shadowy figures. I got a strange feeling that if you were to head into the cell that's still around, you just might find yourself in a place that you don't want to go to. In our number 1 spot today we have Blickling Hall in Norfolk. Blickling Hall, located in Norfolk, England, is a beautiful stately home that dates back to the 15th century, and it has been the subject of numerous reported ghost sightings and paranormal activity. One of the most famous ghost stories associated with the hall is that of the Anne Boleyn ghost. According to legend, Anne Boleyn, the second wife of Henry VIII, was born at Blickling Hall, and her ghost is said to haunt the property. Her ghost has been seen wearing a white dress and carrying her own severed head. That is really about as haunting as it gets. Apparently on the anniversary of her execution, people have reported seeing Anne ride up to the estate in a ghostly carriage, driven by a man who is also headless. Another famous tale is that of the Screaming Lady. It is said that a lady who was killed in the hall has been heard screaming in the corridors at night. The estate is now owned by the National Trust because no one else would want to buy that haunted of a house, and it remains a popular spot for those interested in history as well as the paranormal.
Starting us off at number 10, Bangor Fort. Built in 1573, the Bangor Fort is believed to have been built by ruler Raja Bhagwant Das for his youngest son Madho Singh. However, while it was once a grand architectural marvel, it's now an abandoned site as well as one of the most haunted places in all of India. As the legend goes, the fort was cursed by a local sadhu. This sadhu lived within the fort area, and as the story goes, he insisted that any house built within the precinct of the fort should not be taller than his own. Moreover, he demanded that if the shadow of any such house, the fort included, fell on his house, he would curse it. And to this day, many believe he cast a curse on this very fort. However, that's not all. Another local legend tells of a black magician or evil saint who fell in love with a princess from the fort town and attempted to use a love potion to win her affection. However, the princess dodged his moves by flinging the potion onto a boulder, which then rolled down towards the magician, physically crushing him. But before taking his final breath, he cursed the fort, condemning it and everyone in it to destruction and desolation. Nowadays, while many visitors are free to travel to the haunted and spooky location during the day, there are strict rules and signs prohibiting visitors post-sundown, and many think it's because the evil souls come out at night looking for humans to terrify. So, I mean, visit at your own risk, but don't say I didn't warn you. Next up at number 9, the South Park Street Cemetery. If there is one place that is sure to be haunted, it's a cemetery. I mean, to be fair, it's quite literally filled with dead bodies, so that shouldn't come as a huge shock, but still, the South Park Street Cemetery is definitely one you don't want to mess with. Built in 1767, South Park Street Cemetery is one of the oldest in the country and was used for British officers and their families. However, despite the fact it's no longer actively used to bury the dead, it still contains many burials as well as many ghost stories. Those that have been claim to experience immediate dizziness as soon as they step onto the property, while some have actually fallen ill or even fainted while on the premises. But even that's not the worst of it. As legend has it, during monsoon, the Dennison family tomb is said to mysteriously ooze blood, and as such has been nicknamed the Bleeding Tomb, which is probably one of the creepiest things I could imagine. So unless you are looking to be haunted by one of the many British officers buried here, I'd steer clear. Coming in at number 8, Tunnel 33. Back in 1898, a British man named Colonel Barragh was assigned as the construction engineer for this tunnel. Now, this tunnel was under a strict time constraint, building-wise, and so after some calculations, Barragh marked 2 ends of the mountain for the tunnel that he claimed would ultimately meet in the middle, forming a straight line. Following his calculations, he then ordered the laborers to begin boring holes in the mountain from either side. However, after weeks of back back-breaking work, it became clear that there had been a miscalculation and that the two ends were not going to meet as expected. As punishment for the time wasted, the British government fired Barag from the project before dumping a hefty fine on him, and of course all of this left him incredibly depressed. Not long after, feeling ashamed and humiliated, Barag walked into the tunnel and took his own life, and ever since it's said that his ghost remains taunting all that try to pass. To this day, locals and railway officials avoid this failed tunnel at all costs, although the few that have gotten close say they felt a chill down their spine as soon as they approached it, and some even claim they've heard the terrifying sound of the Colonel's last scream. Coming in at number 7, Buli Batiyari Ka Mahal. Located in Delhi, this lodge was built in the 14th century as a hunting lodge for the Sultan Firuz Shah Tughlaq and has been associated with the terrifying paranormal for almost just as long. As the legend goes, after finding out that one of his queens had been unfaithful, the Sultan decided to imprison her here until her death. Said to have died on these very grounds, those that visit claim to have seen her roaming around at night seeking revenge on the Sultan. But of course, as the Sultan is nowhere to be found, she's known to take her anger out on anyone who trespasses, sometimes scratching, pinching, or even biting anyone she wants gone. And to make matters worse, many have reported the sounds of her blood-curdling scream echoing through the walls. However, it's not just visitors that have been scared by the scorned queen. Apparently, there have also been numerous accounts of security guards quitting their jobs shortly after they are hired due to how many inexplicable and haunting incidents happen here every single night. Next up at number 6, Jamali Kamali Mosque and Tomb. Located in the archaeological complex of Marali in South Delhi, the Jamali Kamali Mosque and Tomb consists of two monuments, a mosque and the tombs of Jamali, a popular poet during the Lodi dynasty, and Kamali, his ultimately unknown but assumed lover. Today the monuments stand tall and have been beautifully maintained, but don't let the outward aesthetic fool you. They are said to be a terrifyingly haunted place to visit. Just about anyone that has dared to visit has reported getting an eerie feeling as soon as they walk through the area, while some claim to have seen strange lights or even frightening demonic apparitions across the grounds, which is terrifying enough in itself cause, you know, demons. But the scariest reports of all are the several visitors that claim they were physically slapped and shoved by an invisible entity, which, short of actually being possessed by a demon, is about as spooky as it gets. So unless you are looking to be attacked by an invisible entity, I would highly suggest skipping past this on your visit. Coming in at number 5, D'Souza Chal. Widely considered to be one of the most haunted places in Mumbai, the D'Souza Chal has garnered the attraction of many paranormal enthusiasts over the years thanks to the haunting legend that surrounds a nearby well. As the story goes, there once was a woman who, while filling up a bucket from the well, accidentally tripped and tragically plunged to her death. And ever since, the residents claim the area has been haunted by a ghost they call the Lady of the Well. The good news is that during the day, it seems you are safe from her wrath. However, it's said that at the strike of sundown, she will appear by the well crying out in pain. But whatever you do, don't be fooled by the old woman's pleas, as many believe that her screams are merely a ruse, and that if you get too close to the Lady of the Well, she may just push you down to spend eternity haunting the place with her. So, with that in mind, if you are really hell-bent on taking a look, do yourself a favor and just visit while the sun's out. Next up at number 4, Kairatabad Science College. Although the college has been deserted for quite some time, once upon a time these walls were home to many young aspiring biologists, and along with the program were understandably some dead bodies for the biology lab. However, sadly, the building fell to ruin, and with it, the building was abandoned and the science program was over. Now, at the time that all of this was happening, the government wanted to make sure that the distraught building did not become a hotspot for criminals, and so they deployed 2 guards to keep the public away. However, prior to abandoning the building, it said that staff did not dispose of the dead bodies properly, and as such, cursed the building to be haunted for the rest of eternity. The next day, one of the guards was found dead on the property with a horrified look plastered across his face, and many believe he was literally scared to death by the ghosts that haunt the college. Coming in at number 3, Kuldara. Once upon a time, the village of Kuldara was booming with residents, but these days it's considered as one of the most haunted locations in India. And of course, just like any good ghost town, it's got a good ghost story to match. According to the legend, Kuldara village was once home to a very wealthy community of people called the Palival Brahmins. However, among them was also a minister and ruler named Salim Singh. Now, legend has it that Singh had fallen in love with one of the villagers' daughters. Let's just say she wasn't exactly an appropriate choice as far as the Palivals were concerned. This pushback didn't seem to deter the ruler, who then told his guards to fetch her at once from the village using any force necessary. But when the guards arrived at the village, the Palival convinced them to return in the morning, and that they would hand over the girl then. However, when the guards returned in the morning, the entire village was gone. It said the villagers escaped in the night, leaving nothing behind but a curse on the village, and it has remained abandoned ever since. Today, it's said to be haunted by the ghost of the evil sultan, and some locals even claim that merely stepping on the property can curse you for eternity. Coming in at number 2, Chandanagar. Located in the Pune district, Chandanagar is a small area with a dark backstory that has produced a ghost so terrifying it would probably frighten even the biggest paranormal enthusiast. Now, if horror movies have taught me anything over the years, it's that small little girl ghosts should be highly feared. And that is exactly what we are dealing with here. You see, years ago, it's said a young girl was tragically killed at a nearby construction site, and it's believed that ever since that fateful day, she has remained haunting the area, wreaking havoc and terrifying anyone she comes into contact with. Described as a young girl with black eyes in a blood-stained white frock, the ghost of the girl is said to show herself at the strike of midnight, holding a doll and skipping across the area. That is until she catches a glimpse of an intruder, and as if straight out of my nightmares, her smile will quickly turn sour and she will charge directly at you, screaming like a banshee. And if that doesn't frighten you, apparently residents in the area are so afraid of the girl that many refuse to leave their houses after dusk in fear that they could come face to face with the terrifying entity. And last up in our number 1 spot, Mukesh Mills. Located in what is now Mumbai, the Mukesh Mills were first established in the 1870s, and for many years it remained the only mill in South Bombay. Fast forward a few years to 1975, and this property was entirely renovated. However, shortly after, in 1982, there was a disastrous fire that ultimately shut down the mills forever. Ever since, the property became known as a deserted ghost town. That was until it caught the eye of the film industry, and directors began using the eerie and abandoned lot to film horror movies. But much to their surprise, there were much scarier things going on at the old desecrated mills than their horror movie. Cast and crew quickly began experiencing paranormal activity, and the reputation attached to the property has become so terrifying that allegedly several actors refused to ever shoot at this mill again. One of the most infamous incidents that took place was when a female actor was shooting and suddenly stopped everything for turning to look at the crew and warning them to leave in a guttural and manly voice. While another is about a young girl who was on set who began behaving strangely out of nowhere. She began moving her body in a weird way before she fell to the floor and started rolling around with her hands turned backwards, as if being possessed. Now, what is it that haunts these grounds that is so hell-bent on possessing trespassers? Many believe it's the ghost of a man who died in the 1982 fire, while others claim it's an evil demon. But whatever it is, you can bet I will never be going near it.
Number 10. Zak Bagans' Haunted Museum. I figured I'd get this one out of the way off of the top. I've talked about this a few times on my home channel, Top 5 Scary, and it's worth shouting out over here as well. Zak Bagans is the famed paranormal investigator from Ghost Adventures, and he spent most of his adult life collecting and hunting things beyond the veil, and he's put it all under one roof for your pleasure. The building itself is said to be haunted, and to Vegas residents, stories go that it used to be home in the late 70s to all kinds of satanic and dark rituals. Since then, it's been rumored to be haunted. No doubt why Bagans wanted to open it there. Bagans' collection boasts some truly impressive relics like the Dybbuk box, thought to be one of the most cursed objects in the entire world. Visitors to the museum report all sorts of unease, seeing strange shadows and figures while they navigate the halls. The museum offers tours for fledgling ghost hunters, and even offers nighttime tours where you have a free roam of the facility, with nary but a flashlight to guide you if you're feeling brave. And if you're feeling truly brave, keep clicking through on Most Amazing and watch all of the fantastic top 10 scary content we've got. And if you got a little room left over, you should check out Top 5 Scary. I hear some of the hosts there are just lovely. Number 9. La Plaza Mansion. The La Plaza Mansion is a now abandoned, allegedly haunted mansion in Las Vegas that was once home to a notorious mobster known as Tony the Ant Spilotro. Over the years, there has been a score of rumors and hearsay out of the Plaza Mansion as to what kind of violence has happened inside those walls and inside the secret tunnels that are built underneath it, as well as the secret rooms around. It makes a good sense that a place where mobsters would meet and greet probably saw its fair share of dark dealings. Various inhabitants over the years have complained of spirits on multiple occasions. One particular vivid story details someone being choked after a glass of wine exploded mysteriously. As well, female guests have reported hearing hooting and hollering while showering at the Plaza Mansion. Pervert ghosts. Yeah, learn something every day. The mansion is closed, but it recently went up for sale again, but it's been struggling to find a buyer. I guess no one really wants to buy a home where you know a ghost is going to be watching you use the loofah. Number 8. The Flamingo Resort. The Flamingo was the prized property and hotel of Bugsy Siegel, the legendary New York mobster who is the undisputed first king of Las Vegas, as he was influential and key to the development of the Las Vegas Strip, becoming the beloved den of sin that we know today. Unfortunately for Bugsy, he didn't get to enjoy his time with his precious flamingo very long, as he was assassinated by a rifle in his own home 6 months after its grand opening. Well, if you believe the rumors, maybe Bugsy keeps finding his way back to his favorite spot, as there are reports of all sorts of sightings of that checkered coat. Fun little aside, little trivia for some of the gamers out there, the villain of Fallout New Vegas, Benny, was directly based on Bugsy, down to the trademark jacket. Anyway, guests of the Flamingo Hotel have reported hearing strange whisperings at night during their rooms, and claim that spectral apparitions have been seen in the presidential suite, Bugsy's old personal room in the hotel. There have been reports of seeing the notorious criminal in the garden as well as the chapel. Perhaps he's still got unfinished hotel business to take care of, or maybe he just loves that spot so much he can't move. Number 7. Pioneer Saloon. The Pioneer Saloon is a little bit outside the Strip proper in the town of Good Springs, and I hate to bring it up again so soon, but if you're a gamer with a keen eye and you're wondering why you recognize this saloon, yep, that is where the tutorial from Fallout New Vegas happens, and it is 100% of why I can't stop banging on about it in this video. But besides being one of the places that Courier 6 first ever stepped foot and began their journey, it's also one of Vegas's most haunted attractions. The Pioneer Saloon is the oldest bar operating in Nevada, and as such, one of the most haunted for years and years of stories. It's said that the wife of Clark Gable, Carol Lombard, can be seen wandering around the saloon at night looking for her husband to console him, but she's not the only one. There's rumors of a spirit of a kindly old prospector who sits at the back of the bar in the wee hours just to make sure ain't nobody causing no trouble. Easy Pete? Lastly, there's a spirit of an old western bar brawler by the name of Paul Koski, who was sent 6 feet under when he was caught cheating at a hand of cards. The coroner's report for him is posted on the wall. They say near the dead of night, you can see a figure of an old gunslinger bleeding out of his side, watching the bar. Number 6. The Mob Museum. Hey, there ain't nothing to see here. Move along at this one. There's nothing to see at point number 6. Well, actually there is. Quite a lot. The Mob Museum is a showcase to the people that made Las Vegas what it is today. Gangsters, crooks, criminals, and all. The museum serves as a monument to all things crooked and corrupt, and is built in the old Las Vegas courthouse, where several of the people who are featured in the museum received the sentence that would change their lives, so to speak. As well, one of the most prominent features of the museum is a swath of the brick wall from the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, still riddled with bullet holes from the infamous bloody clad. cash. Employees who work at the Mob Museum claim that in their time, it's not uncommon to see shadowy figures wandering through at night, quite possibly the lost souls of old mobsters who never got a peaceful rest, probably due to, being perforated by bullets. Number 5. The Luxor Resort. The Luxor Resort has been host to paranormal rumors pretty much since it was constructed. Maybe it's because it was built to look like an ancient Egyptian tomb. Maybe it's the gigantic black pyramid with a giant light atop its peak that looks like it's a dark temple that's attracting all of the malevolent energy in the world inside the Luxor. Could be that. An unknown number of construction workers died during its construction, and shortly after its opening, 2 guests jumped from the balconies. You should know too as well. The Luxor is also home to a massive collection of artifacts recovered from the wreck of the Titanic, all the way up to a giant piece of the bulkhead complete with a piece of the window. You gotta imagine if there wasn't already enough evil energy inside that building, bringing in a bunch of relics from the Titanic has gotta push it overboard. No pun intended, wow. Employees have reported that deceased passengers from the Titanic came with their relics, appearing, disappearing, and making their presence known. Some rooms in the resort are even modeled directly after rooms in the Titanic, where people report increased spiritual activity. Maybe they feel at home. Number 4. Fox Ridge Park. It's not all glitz and grime all the time in Las Vegas. There still has to be a community, The people have to live somewhere. Can't all just be wall-to-wall casinos. There has to be room for grocery stores and places for people to play. Perhaps once you've had your fill of shooting craps, you can take a walk down to Fox Ridge Park, a small little playground in Henderson, the city that neighbors Las Vegas. The story goes that a long time past, a boy was run over by the park, and his soul has been bound to it ever since. People report seeing the swing set moving when no one's around or no wind could be blowing it, and even outright saying that they see spectral apparitions. He's apparently very angry, however, and I never quite got over his condition, and it's been said that he takes the form of a demonic entity or some monstrous specter to would-be paranormal investigators who go and disturb him. So it might be best to leave this one to the pros and check out some of the other stuff on the list. Tell Zach Baggins about this one. Number 3. Rhyolite Ghost Town. Not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but we'll go through it anyway. After you've made a day seeing the sights of Las Vegas, consider taking a road trip outside of the strip to Rhyolite, an abandoned ghost town just outside. It used to be a prospering mining community during the gold rush, but was abandoned altogether in the panic of 1907. It still stands now as a monument to an America long gone, a town frozen in amber, perfectly preserved. Even just looking at it, pictures of it is kind of giving me the willies, You look at it and it feels like things should be moving and bustling, but instead it's just a graveyard. You can wander around the remnants of the old town, seeing the desolate ruins of a bank and a jail. Because of its eerie, abandoned nature, it's a very popular spot for paranormal enthusiasts to scout out to try and see if maybe, just maybe, they can catch a bona fide ghostly gunslinger or vanquished varmint still wandering around on this mortal coil. Number 2. Hoover Dam. Hoover Dam? What? Really? Well, yeah, you would be surprised how many rumors and ghost stories I found about Hoover Dam while researching for this video. So many of them, they ought to call it the Hoover Dam. Thank you folks, thank you. I'll be here all week. Not really, just this video, but you can catch me on Top 5 Scary if you liked me. In the years since the impressive dam's construction, it's seen its fair share of fatal jumpers who chose the iconic landmark as their last destination. As well, over 100 workers were fatally injured in the construction of the dam between 1931 and 1936. Some visitors to the dam report hearing dripping water and what sounds like malfunctioning equipment despite everything working in order. As well, some of the employees who work at the dam complain of tools missing or things malfunctioning, not working properly during the lower levels. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. When Hoover Dam began to rise, so did the waters of Lake Mead. The town of St. Thomas had to be evacuated. After the water levels of Lake Mead had calmed, and after 70 years of the water receding, the ghost town of St. Thomas was officially unearthed. While the town was evacuated under government order, there's no proof one way or the other to say that everyone did. So it's entirely possible that some residents of St. Thomas could have been trapped there, and their souls now doomed to the dam forever, alongside jumpers and poor workers, making it a real hot spot for paranormal activity. Luckily, I have to imagine a dam that big's gotta be keeping some of it in, right? And finally, the #1 most haunted spot in Vegas is Bally's Las Vegas Resort. In 1980, a raging fire scorched the tower of the original MGM Grand Resort. It was an absolutely dreadful disaster that claimed the lives of 85 people and badly injured many, many more. The building was restored and sold and renamed to Bally's in 1985. But given the building's treacherous backstory, it's no surprise how many guests complain about paranormal experiences there. Guests who stay in the original refurbished tower complain of overwhelming smell of smoke smoke, or the sounds of people screaming throughout the night. Others notice that on higher floors, the furniture will move unexpectedly, or windows have been shut or even locked that can be found open. It's thought that these are the spirits of those on the higher floors desperate to escape, not knowing they never will. There's a famous ghost in Bali's residents claim to see of an old woman who sits at a slot machine on the casino floor, blankly pulling the lever and idly playing calmly until she bursts into flames without making a noise, and then vanishing in the blink of an eye. She only appears for seconds at a time, but she's been purportedly seen many times. Ugh.
Number 10. Ruyang Hotel. Often regarded as the ugliest building in the world, which I can agree with, the Ruyang Hotel is a 180-story structure in Pyongyang. The hotel was started in 1987 and stopped in 1993, and it seems unlikely that it will ever be finished as a functioning hotel. The building consists of 3,000 suites and 5 revolving restaurants, at least as it was planned. Currently, it sits at the heart of the city as a concrete shell, but its massive size, aka 1,082 feet, makes it difficult to ignore as it dominates the skyline. But if you ask anyone who lives in the city, they deny it exists, even though it's clearly there. Tourists traveling by taxi have found it impossible to use the hotel as a landmark because no one admits that the building is there. It's even airbrushed out of official photographs. And even if it ever is finished, who is supposed to stay there? Even ignoring the low wages of the average North Korean, there's no real tourism industry to speak of, so it's just strange. Number 9. The Arch of Reunification. The Arch of Reunification was erected in 2001 to commemorate Kim Il-sung's proposal of a reunited Korea. The arch stands above the Reunification Highway, which leads from Pyongyang to the demilitarized zone DMZ. The concrete arch features 2 Korean women dressed in traditional outfits holding up a sphere with a map of unified Korea on it. It's one of the more thoughtful gestures from the dictatorship, so thoughtful in fact that it almost makes you forget about those tunnels they dug leading into South Korea. Almost. Anyway, the arch is strange for 2 reasons. One, the highway it stands above is largely unused. Tourists in the capital city often remark how the highway has large lanes but little traffic. The use of so few cars is attributed to the poor financial standing of the average citizen, so bikes are a more common form of transportation. But the streets are so empty that tour guides will cut across lanes on either side to avoid the numerous potholes. There are also people that believe that the arches have a dual purpose. According to some, the arch was constructed with explosives inside, and I honestly wouldn't put it past them doing this. Number 8. Web cafes. North Korea doesn't really have internet access. Their websites, almost all of them government controlled, are as secluded as the country itself, and for many the only means of accessing them are through web cafes. North Korea is unable to host their own web pages, and as a result they rely instead on China, Japan, Germany, and even the United States for servers. As of 2007, Kwangmyeong only permitted access to a little over 30 different pages. They don't offer any connections to the outside world, and instead requests can be made for content. If accepted, Kwangmyeong downloads, censors, and re-uploads the content. However, Kwangmyeong remains unattainable for most people. 90% of North Koreans are completely unfamiliar with the internet. While it's theoretically possible to pick up a satellite connection from other Asian ISPs, smuggling the needed components into the country is next to impossible. For tourists, hotels in the city offer email services, however users aren't permitted to type their messages directly. Instead, they must be written and handed to an employee, and many tourists have noted that their messages are never received and probably are never sent, which is, wow. What a shocker. Number 7. Yongbyon Nuclear Facility. One of North Korea's most controversial sites is the Yongbyon Nuclear Scientific Research Center. Yongbyon is North Korea's main nuclear facility. It houses the country's first nuclear reactors and produced the fuel used in the country's nuclear tests in 2006 and 2009. The center produced the fissile material for North Korea's 6 nuclear weapon tests from 2006 to 2017, and since 2009 is developing indigenous light water reactor nuclear power station technology. As of January 2019, the main facilities did not appear to be operating. However, in August 2021, the International Atomic Energy Agency reported North Korea appeared to have restarted the 5MW reactor, so That's fun. Number 6. Kim Jong-il's tomb. When North Korea's great leader Kim Il-sung suddenly died in 1994, the country was in a state of staged national mourning that had never been seen before on such a scale. Then when his successor, the great leader's son Kim Jong-il, the dear leader, suddenly died as well at the end of 2011, the scenes of public mourning even topped those in 1994. Now they lay to rest in the same building, but with everything in North Korea, you just can't go there and visit. One tourist got the chance and said, "You're at the mercy of your tour guides and what they've been told they can show you." When we went, Kim Jong-il was laying in state in his glass coffin. Somber music piped through hidden loudspeakers, not a word was spoken. Guards made sure the procedures were orderly and appropriate. We had to line up in fours and bow 3 times at the great leader's feet and both sides but not the head, as this is regarded as disrespectful apparently. You also can't take photographs. Now, that description just sounds overall spooky, and I don't think I'd want to go there even if I could. Number 5. Hwasong Camp. The 212 square mile prison camp is believed to house 10,000 people, many of them political prisoners. Reportedly, no one has ever escaped. Prisoners are exploited for hard, dangerous, and deadly labor in mining, logging, and agriculture. According to Mr. Lee, a former security officer in Hwasong Camp, the inmates were overworked and they had very little time to rest. Prisoners had to work all day until they fulfilled their quotas and attend self-criticism meetings afterward. Often they were allowed to sleep only for 4 hours at night. Mr. Lee witnessed many fatal accidents in the workplace, and information is extremely limited as the camp has always been a maximum security camp under strict control and surveillance. An unidentified teenager reported how he was sent to the camp with his entire family at age 13. He witnessed his father being beaten cruelly and his mother and sisters being taken advantage of by security guards. Residents from nearby villages have heard about the horrific conditions inside the camp, but were never allowed to get near the camp. Number 4. Kijongdong. Kijongdong, better known as Propaganda Village, is a truly creepy place in North Korea. Built in the 1950s, Kijongdong is situated on North Korea's end of the DMZ and has a grand total of 200 people living in it. Well, that's if you believe the North Korean government. In reality, there are absolutely no residents. 0. It's completely empty. The village was designed to show off the virtues of North Korean lifestyle to South Korean villages in view and to lead to defection. The brightly painted concrete buildings were much more lavish than rural villagers in either country could afford. Each building is wired for electricity with lights running on a timer. Skeleton crews appear at night to maintain the buildings and give the general appearance that someone might actually be living there. However, anyone with a set of binoculars can see that the buildings are empty, some completely lacking floors, ceilings, and even glass windows. Whether or not the village has led to defection is unknown, but it's hard to imagine anyone falling for the trick nearly 60 years later. Number 3. Kim Il-sung Stadium. Kim Il-sung Stadium is a multi-purpose stadium located in Pyongyang, the capital city of North Korea. It's the largest stadium in the world and can house 150,000 people. Now, I know what you're thinking. How can a stadium be scary? Well, what it's used for is truly haunting. Rarely, if ever, are there any sports events held there, as the stadium is mostly used for propaganda and military parades. During these parades, there are many huge images shown in the stands, but it's actually just North Koreans holding up a piece of cardboard to create the image. They have to stand there holding up the cardboard for hours. It's also been alleged that traitors of the state have been taken into the stadium to be paraded around and have never been seen again. In particular, a group of generals disappeared in the stadium after an attempted coup attempt. And later on that day, smoke could be seen coming out of the stadium. Number 2. Room 39. Room 39 is an organization meant to get foreign currency for the leader through any means necessary. It was established by the nation's forefather Kim Il-sung in the late 1970s. The agents there would manufacture drugs, counterfeit notes, deal arms, and traffic humans to fund their leader's lavish lifestyle. They hired chemists to produce which are then smuggled to Japan, China, and across Asia. The mysterious organization is estimated to bring Kim Jong-un between $500 million and $1 billion per year, enabling him to buy political support and fund nuclear programs. With the revenue from Room 39, Kim never goes hungry. While his people starve to death, Kim enjoys dishes like foie gras, lobster, and caviar. Overall, this is just insane to me how they can get away with this. And coming in at number 1 is Camp 22. Camp 22 was a prison camp in North Korea that was reported to have been closed in 2012, but I'm not too sure I believe that. The camp was a maximum security area, completely isolated from the outside world. The camp was founded around 1965 and is surrounded by an inner 3,300 volt electric fence and an outer barbed wire fence with traps and hidden nails between the two fences. The camp was controlled by roughly 1,000 guards and 500 to 600 administrative agents. The guards were equipped with many weapons to make sure that the prisoners behaved. In the 1990s, there was an estimated 50,000 prisoners in the camp. Prisoners were mostly people who criticized the government, people deemed politically unreliable, or purged senior party members. Based on the guilt by association principle, they are often imprisoned together with their whole family, including children and the elderly, and including any children born in the camp. All prisoners were detained until they died. They were never released. A former guard described the conditions in the camp as harsh and life-threatening. He likened the prisoners to walking skeletons, dwarfs, and cripples in rags. He estimated that about 30% of the prisoners had deformities, such as torn off ears, smashed eyes, crooked noses, and faces covered with cuts and scars resulting from beatings and other mistreatment. Around 2,000 prisoners, he said, had missing limbs, but even prisoners who needed crutches to walk were still forced to work. Prisoners had to do hard physical labor in agriculture, mining, and inside factories from 5 a.m. to 8 p.m., followed by ideological re-education and self-criticism sessions. Almost 30,000 people reportedly died of starvation at this camp in 2012. This is literally so disgusting, and it makes me so upset that humans could treat other people that way. Ugh.
And we're starting off with West Castleton. I have always wanted to go to a ghost town. I think it would be like really eerie, fun at the same time, and the town of West Castleton on Lake Bomoseen has long been abandoned. What once used to be a busy, bustling industrial town has been empty since the 1930s, and there are many who claim that the area is teeming with ghostly apparitions. There is one tale about two men who once took their boat out to visit a tavern in town but were never seen from again. The only remnants of the men was their empty rowboat found floating alone in Lake Bomoseen following day. Some say that on some nights when the moon is full, to have seen an empty, semi-translucent rowboat silently making its way across the water towards the abandoned town on the other side of the lake. If you're liking the channel, guys, don't forget to comment and subscribe. It really helps us out more than you probably know. All right. On to number 9. At number 9, we have Montpelier Cemetery, more specifically the Black Agnes statue, sitting atop the grave of John Hubbard, a notorious crook in the late 1800s who swindled his way into gaining his aunt's inheritance, which was meant to go to the city. He received his aunt's estate to the frustration of the city leaders, but died of liver cancer just a few years later. This statue is pretty famous for being one of the most haunted items in the state of Vermont. And just looking at it doesn't really surprise me much. I don't really believe in curses myself. I've never been cursed, at least that I know of, and I've never successfully cursed anyone else, though I have tried on a number of occasions. But looking at a statue like this, I could see why people would feel a little uneasy around it, especially upon learning that the statue is meant to be the personification of death itself, the Greek god Thanatos. It is said that if you sit on the statue's lap, you'll be met with misfortune, and if you dare sit upon it on a full moon at midnight, you will die within a week. Next on the list, we have the Brattleboro Retreat Tower. This beautiful Gothic tower sits on the grounds of Brattleboro Retreat, which is a mental health facility that still operates today, but was originally built as an asylum in 1834. This particular tower was constructed between 1887 and 1894 by patients of the asylum, with doctors believing they would benefit from physical labor, and the tower still remains, now standing abandoned. That tower has a bit of a dark history, though. There were said to be multiple cases of patients having taken their lives from the top of the tower, and in the 1920s and 30s, there were multiple surrounding the tower that finally led to its entrance being boarded up in 1938. Those who visit the structure today claim to feel an eerie presence, even reporting having seen ghostly apparitions plummeting from the top. If I ever find myself in the area, I'd love to check it out. Aside from the ghost stuff, it'd just be really cool to hang out by this gothic tower in the middle of a forest. Glastonbury Mountain, located in Bennington County's Green Mountain National Forest, has been the breeding ground for all sorts of paranormal activity. If you decide to traverse the mountain, you just might happen across a Sasquatch or spot a UFO in the sky. There's even an Algonquin legend about a stone that devours people. And if all that isn't enough to pique your interest, the area is also said to be cursed. 5 hikers known to have gone missing in the area between 1945 to 1950. Only one body was ever found, and the cause of death was never determined. There have also been so many strange occurrences in the area. It's often referred to as the Bennington Triangle, like the Bermuda Triangle. See, you get it. Number 6, the Dutton House in Shelburne Museum. Shelburne Museum is a collection of various historical buildings, most of which have been moved to the property from other locations. And one of these structures is the Dutton House. The home was built by the Dutton family in Cavendish, Vermont in 1781. And 11 people are thought to have died in the home, and it was left abandoned for decades before being moved to the museum in 1950. Staff say they've seen some pretty strange things in there, like the sound of a little girl crying, which isn't a sight, that's something you hear, James. Anyway, but they've also seen ghostly faces in windows. Some visitors claim they've heard eerie whispers in the halls and felt an icy chill running down their spines. And there have been sightings of a transparent figure roaming the house at night. They say it's the ghost of the original owner who passed away. Some folks reckon he and his family are still lingering around. They're refusing to leave the home. Some staff are so creeped out by the place that they just refuse to go inside it entirely. Next, we have Green Mountain Inn. This inn is said to be haunted by one primary apparition, that being Boots Berry, located in Stowe. This beautiful inn, built back in 1833, pretty picturesque. Honestly, if I ever take a trip to Stowe, this is where I want to stay. But you may find yourself rooming with an extra guest. Boots Berry was said to have been born in the hotel, the son of 2 employees. As he grew up, he developed a drinking problem, though, and was eventually kicked out of the inn. Landed himself in a prison in New Orleans, but soon returned to Stowe, where he supposedly fell to his death off the roof of the Green Mountain Inn, where he apparently loved to tap dance. So some say on some nights they can hear the sounds of his tap dancing feet on the roof. Others claim to have actually seen a full-bodied apparition of Boots making his way down the corridors of the inn. Number 4, Norwich University. Some dark things are said to have happened in the walls of this prestigious institution, with its gorgeous campus nestled among the rolling hills, and has a reputation of being haunted. There's a boarded up dorm room where a long time ago 2 students were said to have taken their lives. Students and staff have reported hearing strange noises and voices emanating from the supposedly empty room. Then you have Chaplain Hall, the former library where books were said to fly and float off the shelves. Nowadays, residents report seeing strange figures roaming the hallway. You also have 2 other areas of the school that are supposedly plagued by paranormal activity, Ranson and Hawkins Hall. Many students have reported waking up unable to move or breathe, feeling like something is sitting on their chest. Sleep paralysis, it can be pretty unsettling, but I doubt there's anything paranormal going on there, especially for stressed out university students, but hey, I guess you never really truly know. Next up, we have Marble Inn, located in Fairhaven, Vermont. This inn is said to have a few different spirits that reside within the building. It was built in 1867, and one of the previous owners apparently passed away in the tea room, and apparently he was pretty upset about it too, because now he, as well as a couple other ghosts, supposedly haunt the place. Many guests have reported waking up to see the figure of a man in a gray suit standing at the foot of their bed. There was also an instance where a repairman was working on the basement and suddenly spotted a woman standing behind him, but she just remained silent before walking into another room. The repairman was obviously pretty confused, but he followed the woman into the room. When he entered it, there was nobody there. Classic ghost story, just an empty, dark room. I wonder what the rest of this workday was like after that. How do you just go back to what you were doing after experiencing something like that? Like, if I saw a ghost, that'd just change everything for me. Oh, ghosts, I guess they just exist now. That completely changes my entire outlook on life. What happens after death? What is reality? Am I just hallucinating things now? Am I someone who hallucinates? What is going on? Anyway, these pipes, they're not gonna fix themselves. Back to work. Number 2, the Bowman House, aka Laurel Hall, regarded as one of the most haunted places in Vermont. The first owner of the home, John Bowman, is buried in a mausoleum on the property along with the rest of his family, each of whom died tragically. Locals swear they've seen shadowy figures moving about the rooms and strange noises echo through the halls at night. Some say they hear the disembodied cry of a baby, which would really freak and irk me out, quite frankly. I can't stand babies crying in public as it is. They seem to show up everywhere I go for some reason. So last thing I need in my life is a wailing ghost baby now. Some people who visit the home even claim to have seen the ghostly figure of Mrs. Bowman standing at the top of the stairs. There are whispers of disembodied voices calling out in despair and ghostly stuff going on. Some folks claim they've even witnessed objects moving on their own. Basically, some people think it's haunted is what I'm getting at here. Number 1, we have Gold Brick Bridge, aka Emily's Bridge. Emily's Bridge in Vermont is infamous for its spooky reputation as a haunted hotspot. Not only is it said to be the most haunted place in the state of Vermont, but one of the most haunted bridges in the United States. This old covered bridge has a tale that'll send shivers down your spine. The story goes that Emily, a young lady head over heels in love, planned to elope with her sweetheart at the bridge, but for some reason, the guy just totally ditched her. Devastated and heartbroken, Emily decided to end her own life. Ever since that fateful day, folks claim to have experienced some pretty creepy stuff around Emily's Bridge. Ghostly sightings, weird noises, the feeling of being watched, and mysterious footsteps. Those are just the tip of the iceberg though. This lady gets physical. People find scratches on their cars. Some who dare to cross the bridge on foot have reported being grabbed or scratched themselves. And you know what? I gotta say, getting grabbed and scratched by a feisty female ghost, I don't hate the sound of that. Might have to book my ticket out there.